I'm Liz Larson.
And I'm Bill McKenna.
And together, we created the Cognomovement system. And we'd like to welcome you to the New Life Perspectives radio show,
where we're going to be sharing with you tools, tips, and ideas that are going to change your life.
Hello in UK Health Radio Land. This is Liz Larson, and my friend Bill McKenna is preparing for our Gaia presentation this weekend. So he won't be joining us, but I do have a very special guest, and I'm super excited to introduce you to her, and also just selfishly to have this conversation because we speak the same language. So this is going to be really fun. Today I have with me Judy Wilkins Smith. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you. It's lovely to be with you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this conversation today. So Judy's book is called Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint. I was very excited as I was reading the overview today. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what we say. I speak the same language, which is rare and really fun to think about. Somebody else out there is doing this amazing work and changing lives as well. So you're an executive trainer, and I'm going to toss it over to you to say the rest of it.
Yeah, I'm an executive trainer, and I'm a systemic work and constellations facilitator and trainer. I teach around the world. And yes, now I write books. Who knew?
Who knew, right? Kind of ends up that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was not on my to-do list. It came and told me it was going to happen. So
let me ask you this about the writing of the books. Did you find it easy or hard?
Gosh, I have a super amazing editor who says to me, dump all the stuff that you need to put there, and then she's the one who rearranges it and says, this goes here, this goes there. It was an interesting thing writing this book because my mom had just been diagnosed with cancer, and I said to him, I knew that there was going to be quite a journey ahead. How do you think I'm going to do the book and this and serve all of my clients? But as it turned out, the book became a place to drop into and to love and to really focus on. And most interestingly, it solidified purpose for me. It suddenly pulled everything together. So I will say it was a lot of work, and I will say putting it together was, I guess, giving it coherent shape and space to be. And as difficult as it was, I found myself going now in my next book and trying to keep my hand over my mouth. But yes, it's been quite a process and an amazing one.
Yeah, I found it really hard. And I thought it was going to be much easier because all of my ideas were all lined up.
Yeah.
And then you get in the process of putting it on the page, and it's the coordinating it, right? That what goes where. So I'm getting better at it, but I found it difficult. We had this great interview with Pam Grout, who's written, 20 plus books, closer to 30 probably.
Right.
And I asked her about this, and for her, it's like breathing. Writing a book is just
not for me.
And me too.
No.
I'm thinking, well, I wish I had that, but I don't. So for us, it's about the work, right? So
very much.
Let's introduce the idea of constellations. Now, is it called constellation therapy? Is it a form of therapy? Share with everybody what that is, because a lot of our audience may have never heard of it.
Okay, so it's systemic work and constellations. Those two go together. The systemic work is really the study of you within a system, because you don't exist in a vacuum, right? You're part of so many systems. Your family system is your original pattern maker, and very often your career is your other one. What you don't work out in one, you may try and work out in the other. They serve each other very well. So that is systemic work. A constellation, best way to explain it is this. If you look at a constellation in the sky, every single star has its precise place. Precise. If you move it a degree to the right or the left. Either it's not that star or not its place, or we don't have the same constellation. And the same goes for us in our systems, specifically in family systems. Whether you were born or not born, but made it most of the way through the process, in other words, miscarriages, stillbirths, abortions, any of those, there was still a place for you, and it can belong to only you. So it's impossible to not belong. Now, a constellation is what we call the breakthrough part of systemic work. So what we do at a live event, for example, is you will come in with an issue, and we will choose live representatives to represent the different parts of that issue. So what we're doing immediately that we do that is we're activating your field, but we're also giving you access to all of your senses as you see this field in front of you. So now you're seeing it, hearing it, touching it, feeling it, even smelling it and tasting it and walking through it. And instead of trying to just figure it out up here, it becomes a multisensorial, very visceral experience. And so as you shift from something that doesn't work or that's been stuck, and you get the ahas and the insights, we have that visceral jolt, and then a little bit later, as you suddenly recognize why that pattern has shown up for you and what your destiny is with it, you'll often see a secondary jolt. And in that moment, people will often tell me, my thoughts are changing right now. My feelings are changing right now. Wait a minute, I'm actually standing on my own 2 feet, and we've had this happen. I don't need the sticks I came in on. So and for me, it's about being really accurate with the language and the perception of what's happening with the body, and clicking in onto all of those pieces all the time, and tuning into the representatives that gives your client this complete peace that almost, somebody said to me, it felt like I had a tornado or something whirling around my head and then around my body, and then everything went whoops and then went whoosh, and got super quiet, and there it was. And so because it's such an embodied piece, the change holds. Now, does that mean it's stuck? No, but the new change holds. I know some people describe it as an upgrade. They can feel it. They're suddenly they're not carrying the heaviness. They're not slow or haven't slowed themselves down. They've done the opposite. You spoke earlier about nervous systems. This work is about showing people that your nervous system isn't your nervous system in isolation. There is a family nervous system. There is a country nervous system. There is a culture nervous system, and you are very tapped into that. And a lot of what's being said and a lot of what's being shown and demonstrated is passing down to you. So it's the first thing I teach people is you don't just inherit your physical DNA. That's a small part. You also inherit your emotional DNA, your patterns of thoughts, feelings, actions, inactions. And you are part of what we call the knowing field. Everything that has happened, not happened, all the events that have led to language and words that have created the truth, which isn't the truth, it's just your truth. And you can change that anytime you want to. And no, it's not rocket science. The minute you learn how to do it, you begin to master your own destiny.
I think that is the most important part. And like I said, we speak the same language, so it's so exciting. We know that is true. We would say just a little different language, that it's a shift in perspective.
Absolutely.
But, to have the understanding that you could take something like your worldview or even your religion. Think about how coded in to our cells that is.
Yes.
And 1 minute see it this way, and the next minute have a completely different perspective on that. Almost seems impossible, but it's so incredibly empowering.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be stuck with anything, including your family's culture. So that's what you're saying. You have this family and you think you're the black sheep. We hear that all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, you think a little bit differently, but you're still in and interacting, you have a coherence. And I love what you said. There's a reason that when you're in Oklahoma, it feels like Oklahoma. The people have a bit of an accent. They have a way of thinking, a way of being that's different than like us out here in Oregon.
Exactly.
Once, this was funny. I used to own car dealerships, and we once had a man who we hired in who was like just a top shot sales manager. And he came from Florida. Well, I start hearing our clients just hate him. And one day I get called to the end of this big dealership, and I'm thinking, what could this man be doing? He's a professional, has a great track record. I get to the other end of the car dealership, and I ask this woman, and someone I knew before, a client that we've had before. And I said, so what happened? What did he do? She said, I don't know what it is, but I cannot stand to be near him. Every word that comes out of his mouth feels offensive to me. So I have a background in NLP. And so I said, so what specifically? Help me, because, he's new here. And I'd love to know. What I discovered is it was his cadence, how fast he spoke, how quickly he got he wanted to do business right away. Well, in Oregon,
yes, you can't do that.
You don't do that. But in Florida, evidently you do. So I discovered that he was a mismatch in his being, his culture. He couldn't fit because our culture is different. So we have this coherence. We start to move at a similar speed.
Right.
We start to speak the same way. We start to think the same way. Whether we like it or not, we begin to vibrate with each other. Heart Math Institute and MIT have proved this out scientifically. So this is so interesting. You're in a family constellation, but we always think we're not the problem. We're not the one. We're not contributing to that issue. So
of course. Okay, so I want to just touch in on your guy in the Oregon, the Floridian guy. All that happened for him was he wasn't acculturated, so he didn't understand the DNA of that system.
Yeah.
And that's something that I work with a lot when I work with executives. Hold on, I get that you're brilliant, but if you don't understand the DNA of the system that you're in trouble. Yeah. Because it's going to bang you and it's going to push you back against the wall. So when people come in, actually, sometimes I hear I'm not the problem, and sometimes I hear I am the problem.
Yeah.
And I'll have someone who comes in who says, it's all my fault. My mother never looks at me. It's terrible. She can't see me. And then I say, tell me about your mom and her mom. Well, her mom didn't see her much too. Oh, maybe we have a pattern. And what about her mom? Well, she was too busy when great-grandfather dropped dead. She had to put food on the table. There wasn't time to stand and see kids. And so that pattern's echoed back down. So I say to the client, so it's all about you? Yes. No, it's not all about you. Look at great-grandma back there. Oh. And yes, it's all about you, because guess what? You're the change agent. So for the first time in 4 generations, you can look at your mother and say, I see you. And you can look at your daughter and say, I see you. And now you're changing the pattern. Now women are seeing their mothers and being seen by their mothers. So it's that changing the pattern piece that allows us to integrate. We're so quick to think that someone's wrong. No, it's what is your DNA? What is my DNA? And how do we sing together here? That's all.
So we need to take a quick break. But when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about that. I find that people don't see their family, their parents. They don't see them as another human being. They just see them as a position mom or older sibling or grandparent. So let's talk about that when we get back. So UK Health Radio, take it away. And we're back. We're talking about constellations, family constellations, and the idea that we don't necessarily see our family as other humans having these kinds of experiences. Do you find
Absolutely.
that too?
Yeah, I find it a lot. And here's one of the biggest pieces in this work. If you reject your mother or you reject your father, there are consequences for that. Now, it's not because you're good, bad, or anything else. you're connected to that lineage. And in that lineage is information you need to be able to plot your way forward. Why does everybody struggle with money? It comes from over there with the Great Depression. What happened? Well, there was a whole lot of language that echoed down, and there were a whole lot of actions, and now I'm struggling and I don't like it. Yes, good. I'm glad you don't like it, because anytime that something irritates you, it's telling you the system is asking for this piece to settle and your pattern to start emerging. But first you have to acknowledge the pattern in place, because it has wisdom and it has information. So you do not want to reject mom and dad, who, yes, indeed, have had their own experiences. And when I set up a constellation, often the anger of the child becomes compassion, insight, connection. Now we're getting the whole story. We're not operating in a vacuum, and we're deeply connected.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. When that perspective shifts and a person is able to see the other person as just another human, not just this position in their lives that victimized or, created the pattern in the first place. Everything shifts. So here's everything shifts, like your whole life. So here's a loaded question, Judy.
Okay.
What about people who are adopted?
Not a loaded question. My daughter is, so I love that question.
Mine too.
Yeah, and I will tell you, she's probably one of the biggest gifts in my life. She's an amazing, amazing lady. What about them? I've worked with them in settings where I had a woman say, "This work is lovely. It doesn't apply to me." Big audience. Mm-hmm. "It doesn't apply to me. I'm adopted. I know nothing. I'm so stuck." And I said to her, "Do you want to work?" And she said, "Okay." Came down, and I said to her, and of course the universe provides, right? There, off to the one side of us was a great big mirror. And I said to her, "Come, let's go and have a look. Tell me about your adoptive family. They're all fair-haired, they're all tall, they're very quiet, they're introverts. Tell me about you." "Well, I just don't fit in." "Why not?" "Well, I'm not as tall, my hair is dark, I have these blue eyes none of them have. Those come from my biological parents. I have a sense of humor that nobody understands." Where do you think that came from? By the time we went through all the bits and pieces, she understood very clearly that of course she had it. In the traditional sense of, I see you walking around, mom and dad, no, but she had it. And her differences were unique and special, and they belonged to that. So then she said, well, now what do I do? Am I supposed to choose? Yeah, I'm going to get, so I set her up in front of all two sets of parents, and I said to her, good, now I want you to look at them because you're going to choose. And she looked and she looked, and I said, good, now tell them, now I choose you all. And her whole body just went, because of course we've got space and place for all, and they are there for a very specific reason. Another thing with adoptees is you can see, now you've got your middle of the roads, but quite often what I see is I have one set, it doesn't matter what they do, they cannot make it in life. And the inner sentence often is, it doesn't matter what I do, I'll never belong, I quit. Mm-hmm. Then we see the other end of the spectrum, which is, I will do whatever it takes to belong. Watch me. And these are our hyper super excellers. And they do extremely well. But they will still say to me, yeah, but I've got a wound. And I say, no, you don't. You have a gift. You have a story to tell that most of us never get to tell. You have people who will come to you precisely because you are the way that you are. You don't have a wound. You have an incredible gift, and it's time to showcase it.
So I'll share a story with you that's very interesting about adoptees, and maybe it might impact somebody out there listening today. So a dear friend of mine, when she was very young, was told she'd never have children. She was only 23, and the doctors decided, you'll never have children. So she decided to have to adopt, and they didn't have a huge amount of money. And as things happen, her aunt ran into a woman in the area where they live, and it was a woman who was pregnant with a child that she couldn't keep. She was married. She had, I think, 4 or 5 other children. and the situation was not good and she could not keep this one.
Mm-hmm.
So they had an open adoption. And they knew, they didn't know each other well, but there was communication and agreement, and the legal stuff was set up. So when the mother went in to give birth, the new adoptive family was there too. The new adoptive mother was there. And so the intention was that she would immediately have the baby in the hospital room so that she could bond, and the other mother wouldn't have to have, that situation where she would bond to a child that she couldn't keep. That was their decision and agreement together. But the hospital had different idea. The hospital decided that because the adoption papers were not finished, they can't be until after a child's born, that only the biological mother could have her, and only anybody else could have the child while she was in the room. So it set up a situation where neither side could really be with this child for 3 days until the legal stuff was sorted out. So they bring home this beautiful baby. And about the time, I'm trying to remember, she was 8 or 9 months old, where she clearly should have been recognizing and reaching out to people, smiling at people she knew. She was not. So the idea was that she was probably autistic. So I was close friends with this woman, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, 3 days, no one held her. We have a rejection and abandon in the nervous system. Now, this was 22 years ago, so it was long before I knew the work I have now, but I did know homeopathy at the time. And I knew of a homeopathic that would help rejection and abandonment. So I thought, well, why not, worth a try? So I told the mom my theory. Her nervous system doesn't know what to do. It didn't have that connection. The brain didn't have the connection at birth. So we gave her the homeopathic, and within just a few days, she started to reach out to her grandpa. And not only that, she was itty tiny and started to say words. I mean, way too early.
Right.
She is the brightest penny on the planet. And it turns out for her, the family she would have come to could not have been a container for her brilliance. It just wouldn't have been able to support her. The new family could. It had the resources, it recognized her.
Right.
And she's now a mommy herself. And she's fantastic at it, just the best little mommy. So I wanted to share that because the two things, we know that adoptions don't always happen smoothly.
Right.
And the little nervous system, the little body, the little consciousness, however you want to say it, is learning even in the womb. And it learns outside of the womb. And in this case, it learned maybe it wasn't welcome. I don't know. I'm guessing. But that pattern ran until it was ended. And all it needed was the pattern to end in the body. And that's what happened. And it changed everything. So I thought that might be an interesting perspective for people to hear.
Absolutely. And in this work, what we would say was that child had an interrupted bond. So it was broken right then. And now, had you not done what you did, what you would then see quite often in this work is you'll see somebody who cannot fully form relationships. Mm-hmm. They'll get to the point of just about to connect, and then it's almost as though they're stung and they pull back. They cannot, because that nervous system has been hit. And what you've got to, and when I do those pieces of work, it's a very slow piece of work where I have a representative for the mom at one end of the room and the child at the other. And it is literally step at a time. It can take hours. And you've got to stop and you've got to keep checking in. Are you still in your body? Are you still with me? At any time we can stop. And sometimes it'll take 3 or 4 times before they can make that movement and that connection. Now, in systemic work and constellations, generally the parent will move to the child. The child will move to the parent. But in this case, a parent sometimes has to move to the child because of what's happened. And with an interrupted bond, it impacts then all other relationships. They can't quite until you've sat and worked with it, at which point they recognize, and the nervous system and the body recognizes, okay, it is now safe for me to connect.
Yeah.
Before then, it has not been safe for me to connect.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that this situation was, it was no one's fault.
No, and it isn't.
It was just a thing that happened. But later on in life, like you said, if that doesn't get fixed, there's this big why. And a lot of times that why gets filled in therapy. That's just not accurate. Oh, your parents didn't appreciate you or didn't love you. And the why is actually in our vernacular. I know it's a little different than yours, but it's a brain development and nervous system development issue in that moment. And
Yes.
For us, not much more, because what needed to happen is the pattern had to be broken, and it was, and it changed everything.
Right.
So in our vernacular, there's this big, why did this happen to me? It can't be fixed because of all the things. And I think the very good news is that it can be changed. And if it's changed with you over 2 hours, that's a lot different than 39 years of.
It is a lot, and I hear that all the time. And I would say that for us, often it is the what. What was the event that caused this? Because when I know what the event was, or what was happening in your life at the time when this started to happen, because I know if I've got that piece, you've also created thoughts, words, feelings, and actions around it. And I'm really interested in those, because those are part of where you are now. Does the why matter? No. What it does do sometimes, I guess, if you have the information, is it gives you insight. But there's another piece that you said earlier that's really important. Often it's no one's fault. It's what you made meaning of that has created the pattern. It doesn't make you good, bad, or whatever. That's what you were capable of interpreting and creating in that moment. Is that still the truth for you? Is it still serving you? And if we were to change that, or if you were to change that, how might everything change? Literally, one thought, one feeling, one action at a time. You do not have to eat the whole elephant. But what is going to happen when you are able to make that switch? Because there is a cost to you being stuck, and there is an incredible opportunity once you move through that.
It's so true. And I love what you're saying about the truth. It's so subjective. People will say, this happened to me. This happened in my life. This is what my mother did. This is who she is. And then for us, it's about eye movements, finding that story in other parts of the brain that have the ability to see a different perspective. And all of a sudden, the person, you'll see a gasp, the neurology change, and they're like, oh my God, that is not what happened at all. One of our famous cases, the woman was certain her mother had never been there for her. Certain. She just wasn't physically there.
Physically.
Yeah. We did, and emotionally too, but physically. And we, took her on a little journey in her own brain. That's all, just where her brain could see a different perspective. And she saw all the places in her life where her mother was there.
Exactly. Now you're doing my work.
Yeah, in the audience, she's there. She's there. She's there. She's there. She's there. She's there. She's there.
Right.
And her mother had passed. She kind of had two moms, like a grandma and a mom, and one was the real mom and one acted like the mom. And she said that it changed everything in her perspective. She had felt abandoned when she didn't know why. We never found the why. There was just a mistake in her perception. Her mom was actually there. Now, maybe her mom wasn't there as emotionally as she could have been. Also, that wasn't the point. But the truth was different.
That's it. And this is, I think, where we intersect very well. It is the perception and the reframe, right?
Yeah.
So just to talk very briefly about that, I had a woman who came in who said, my whole family is sterile. I really want to belong with them. I can't connect with them. They don't show me any love, or not much. they just give me, and she said, just little drops of love. That's all they give me. And I said to her, okay, so tell me about your family. They'd come from the Holocaust. They'd had to go through awful things to survive, and that included her brother, who was very much like them. And I said to her, stop 1 minute. They gave you little drops of love. Yes, that's all they gave me. I said to her, is that all they gave you, or is that all they could give you? And she said, oh no, it's all they could give me. And I could see her already starting to change. And I said to her, now tell me something else. What do you like as a mom? She said, I love my kids. I'm full of joy. I'm full of love. And I said to her, so do you understand what you've done for your family and what you've done for yourself? And she went, no. I said, you took those little drops of love and look what you grew. For a family who couldn't feel love, you do. It changed everything for her. When she got that, she could look at them and go, I got it. Thank you for giving me what you could.
Yeah, right?
What
So
you
beautiful.
could.
All right, so let's pick this up after the break. We need to hear from our lovely sponsors at the UK Health Radio. And UK Health Radio, take it away. And we're back. So we're talking about this ability in your work to radically shift perspective
Absolutely.
and shift what we believe is the truth. This is so exciting to me that we can shift those things. And when you say it changes everything, it's true because your reality is shifted. The basis on which you're living your life is now changed. In the story I told, the person's basis was, my mom was never there for me. There must be something wrong.
Right.
Holy crap. Actually, she was there for me every time at the best she could do. And now for this woman, she knows for sure she was loved by her mom.
Right. And it changes everything,
momentary.
right?
Well,
yeah.
Literally your worldview changes.
That's it.
Worldview changes. So, one of these changes can change someone's financial situation.
Yes, I was hoping you would go to money. Yeah. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So talk about that, because everybody wants to know about that.
Absolutely. So one of the other things that's super important to understand is that for most of us, by the way, we're not living in the present nor creating the future. We're going back generations and we are reiterating those patterns. We're literally living ancient history. And that's one of the other things that this work does, is it shifts that so you are present and you're truly creating the future. And then people will come to me and say, okay, now one of my favorites is when I'm at a live event and they say, I want to be richer. It's a terrible trap, because I walk in and I take a penny and I go, there you are, you're done.
Yep, you just got richer.
Aside from the flippancy, we also inherit our money DNA. And it's very clear. If you sit down and think about, where did my money thoughts and actions come from? Well, they did it and they did it and they did it. Or conversely, I watched all of my family struggle and struggle. They never got out of a housing project. They had tough times. They were kind. There was never money. I don't want to do that. Well, okay then, in which case you can no longer see money as a commodity, because it's not. It's a relationship. And the way that you treat it is the way it's going to show up for you. So tell me about people with money. Oh, they're greedy, they lie, they cheat, they steal. Okay, so you want to become greedy and a liar and a cheat? No. What makes you think that that's their DNA? No, it's not their DNA either. They think differently, they feel differently, they interact with money differently. Their library, all of their neural networks and the pathways are very differently stocked to yours. And you want to stock yours consciously. Now, when I do money DNA events, every single time I do one, I kid you not, I have at least 2 or 3 people who say, you've made me very rich. I'm beginning to think I have to charge a premium for this.
Yeah,
but what's happened is, I didn't do it. They had a look at where they were. They were willing to look, and they were willing to change the programming that was sitting there that probably came from generations ago, and to say to their parents and their grandparents, For you who couldn't, I can. Watch me as I do it differently. And the other thing that I found that super helpful is I would say to them, so what are you going to do if you have a whole lot of money? Well, the one thing for me, I will share mine was, one day when I can, I want Disney timeshare. And it became a thing because I love Disney.
Yeah.
Well, I never lost that. And when I started rewiring, suddenly I found that I had enough for a deposit.
Huh.
That I hadn't had before because I would never have thought that way. So
Right.
again, it's reorienting you and you within the family system and all of the things that you've made the truth about money and rewiring those so that it becomes a visceral rewiring.
Yeah.
And yes, then things change. The minute you change, as I said with the stars, the minute you change one thought, one feeling, one action, the same is literally not possible. You're observing a new reality into being.
It's exactly right. And you know, it's huge and exciting.
It's very
And
exciting.
that's the
It's
great news.
very
And the bad
exciting.
news is at the same time that the thought and the feeling and the action that you're doing, which many times is suffering about what you don't have, is as equally creating. You know, we our nervous system, I mean, this is
Yes,
my language again, but our nervous systems are projecting into the greater field.
right.
And that's good, bad, or ugly. It's moment to moment. So the moment you can change it, the moment it changes. And so often we've imagined like your Disney into
Yes,
the field so much that, you know, like Abraham Hicks says, it's literally standing right outside your fence waiting for an invitation,
it is. It's sitting
but
there
you're
going,
not
can
a
you just
match.
move?
Yeah, you're
Yes,
not a match until the moment you are.
and
And so that
exactly.
feeling place in your body is the same feeling place as that Disney timeshare. And then, hello, like magic, it's like a miracle. It shows
Yes.
right up.
And what you're describing in my book, I actually talk about hidden language. We have a whole language, but we're only taught half. We're taught the suffering, limitation,
Oh, yes,
can't.
yes,
And
yes,
so
yes.
that's what's wired in. When we begin to speak the whole language, you can, you're absolutely capable of. Of course, this is possible, but we were wired into the limiting half and the part that said, you've got to suffer into transformation. Well, I will tell you that people, when I work with them and they bliss out,
Yeah.
they get it. They suddenly realize you do not have to suffer to transform. You can wow your way there.
Judy, you know what the name of our first book is?
Uh-uh.
Suffering is optional.
I love it. Yes.
Wait, you know,
Yes.
here's the thing. Why do we say optional? And I just want to say this. I had a friend uh, tell me this morning that, you know, she's in a big transition, marriage and family. And she said, I said, how are you? And she said, you know, I'm fabulous and horrible all in the same day. And she said, you know, I found myself kind of balled up in the fetal position. And she says, pretty soon, I think I should be using my ball. I mean, we use a Cogno ball. And she said, but there was a little while where I wanted to suffer. And then, you know, you're in it. You want to feel you, it's the drama, right?
Well,
It's,
it's not just the drama. That's what we call a systemic trance.
yeah,
So what you were describing there was she had that momentary attachment to the family system, right? She needed to touch back in like we sometimes do. You know, if you're running away from mom because you're this big kid, you're still going to come in and touch in. And that's what she was doing. And sometimes it's as though we want a reassurance that it's okay for us to move on. So we touch it back into the old system. When I'm doing a constellation, I'll see people right at the point of moving into it, and they'll suddenly stop. And what I'll say to them is, whose permission do you need now to move forward? And it's back there in the system.
mm-hmm.
They'll say, but I don't want to move too far forward because then I'm going to leave them behind. No, you're not going to leave them behind. You're expanding the system. And if you move forward, the system will come. It may take a minute, but it'll come. So don't worry about it.
You know what is so interesting about that? we discovered, and because our work is, I think, a little more physically focused, like actually nervous system focused, we discovered at one point when a person's body was not letting go, that we had to actually ask permission of the physical body, the cells in the physical body, the
Makes
logical
perfect
mind, and the higher self, and all three had a different opinion. And strangely, even if you got a no, we cannot, sometimes we negotiate with the nervous system. How about 30%? How about 50%? When it lets go a little bit, eventually it lets go of it all. But it has an opinion. So these permissions.
and a connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a connection probably to a prior piece or a prior member who they've been representing or pulling in, because if there's an exclusion, we represent the prior generation. And if they've got that contract, you could do what you want. They're not moving.
Yep.
And so it's to actually turn to that prior generation and say, I see you. And you have a place, and I can give you that place in my heart, but I can't give it to you in my nervous system. And then often you'll find that it will release.
Yeah. It shifts right away. Okay. So this conversation has been so fascinating. I love it. Love talking to you. And I want everybody else to be able to get a piece of what you're doing. So you said that you would walk us through a paper constellation.
Basic paper constellation, yes.
Paper. So we have just about 10 minutes.
Good. And I'm also going to tell you that if they go to my website, there are constellations meditations, which will help them. It'll take you, yeah.
Yeah. Would you please give us that now? Because the website and how to contact you, because I know we're going to run out of time at the end.
Sure. Judy Wilkins-Smith.com. And if they go to the products, they'll see the meditation of the mother and the meditation of the father, and that connects you to the line of the mother and the line of the father. And yeah, there have been amazing successes with that. But to do a basic paper constellation, it's one of the reasons I wrote the book. I want people to be able to do this practically. So what you would do is you would take a whole number of Post-it notes, and on each one, you're going to assign a member to each one. So you're going to write mom on one, dad on one, siblings or maybe different siblings on different pieces of paper, and one for you. And then at the top of each sticker or post-it, I want you to put a little arrow, because that indicates the direction that you're placing. So you've got those pieces written. Then you're going to pick up those pieces of paper and place them in relationship to each other, the way that it feels true for you about your family system. Now, I often do this with big pieces of computer paper too, because then you can go and stand on them and walk around. And so once you've got that, just stand back and take a look, and you're going to notice some members are closer, some members are further apart. Perhaps one is looking away. What's that about? There's a whole piece there. Perhaps one is looking in. Who is disengaged? And when you look at yourself, where are you in the family system? So do you find yourself on the edge? Are you always in the middle? And how is that for you in your career? Is it different in your career, or is it the same? Because these two systems often help each other. So you want to take a look and then write down your thoughts and your feelings as you're looking at this. Stand in different places and notice your thoughts and your feelings as you stand in the shoes of your mother or the shoes of your father. What does it feel like to stand in your elder sister's shoes? Have a look at the thoughts and the feelings that you pick up, and notice where that resonates for you in your brain, in your heart, and absolutely in your gut, because your gut will start telling you this is helpful, this is scary. It's a very accurate inner compass. So that is a basic paper constellation. It allows you to begin having that first look at your family system and the multiple generations.
Wow, that's amazing. So, if you guys try this out there, you have to let us know, and let us know how it worked for you. Let Judy know how it worked for you, because it's really a different way of looking at things. It's really a different way of thinking about family and changes in family. Because don't you think that most of us used to believe that you got the family you got the interaction with the family you got, and you're never going to change it? and it's just not accurate.
Nope, it's not.
No,
And in fact, you are born to be the change agent.
I believe that too. We had someone who was, at the very end of a long session, and we were just down to a pinprick on the bottom of her foot. That was the only sensation. And we work with sensation. She said, it's getting late. People are waiting. Let's just, it's okay. So I said to her, when you change this for you, you literally change it for the planet.
Yes.
Okay, then let's do it. So we finished, and I'm telling you that the change was on the line of miracles. So if you're hesitant out there about doing this work, know that when you do it, you not only do it to change you, your cellular structure, your DNA, your family history, your future, but for the planet as well.
And for all those who come after you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That change you're making for your downline and just everybody's downline, right? Yeah. So Judy, thank you so much for this conversation. It really has been such a joy. I could talk to you for days.
Likewise.
Yeah. And will you please join us again at another time?
You invite, I will be there. I can't wait to be there. And I will be thinking of you when you do your presentation to Gaia.
Oh,
Go
thank
well.
you. Yeah, I think it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful event. Again, the planet needs it. We're ready. So that'll be great. Well, thank you, Judy. And we will see you guys out there in the UK Health Radio next week. So Judy, thank you so much for this conversation. It really has been such a joy. I could talk to you for days.
Likewise.
Yeah. And will you please join us again at another time?
You invite, I will be there. I can't wait to be there. And I will be thinking of you when you do your presentation to Gaia.
Oh,
Go
thank
well.
you. Yeah, I think it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful event. Again, the planet needs it. We're ready. So that'll be great. Well, thank you, Judy. And we will see you guys out there in the UK Health Radio next week. Thanks for being here with us on the New Life Perspective radio show. For more information or to find out more about the work that Bill and I do, please visit us at cognomovement.com or email us at info@cognomovement.com. See you again soon.